Imagine getting shot with a gun. Now, imagine you also have a wife, kids, and a job. We're going to hear the incredible story from Dylan Hudock. Dylan is an Army veteran, sales operations professional, and father of two. We hear about how he came back from his near-death experience, how his family got by with him on bed rest, and what his new lease on life has inspired him to do. I'm Anthony Franzese. This is the Successful Working Parents podcast, where we learn from busy working parents how they're able to balance it all and still thrive. Thank you for listening. On to the show. Welcome back to the Successful Working Parents podcast, the podcast where we talk to successful working parents. Title still pending. My guest today, he is a sales operations manager. He's the host of the Dad Bod Brigade podcast, U.S. Army veteran. Thank you for your service, and father of two. Ladies and gentlemen, Dylan Hudock. Dylan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Anthony. It's good to be here, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. I had a blast on your podcast a little while ago, so I'm excited to turn the script around a little bit and chat with you more.
Yeah, honestly, this is only the second time I've been a guest on a podcast, even though I run my own podcast. I should probably do this more often.
Okay. It's a lot more fun, I got to say.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty sweet. Awesome. Well, we usually kick off with a little background on your career, so love to hear about that.
Yes, I mean, I went right out of college, like kind of right into sales. I've had, my dad was your standard like salesman, like, from, the movie Always Be Closing, like that kind of, like that was his thing. And that's kind of what I grew up with. I have friends that did the same thing. So right out of college, went into sales, had this kind of calling the entire time I was either a kid and an adolescent and then going through college that I wanted to serve in the military. I've had, every male father figure in my family been in the military since as far back as we can trace, our roots. So I went into sales and then just kind of stopped and went a different direction and went into the Army maybe 4 years after I graduated from college. So served my time in the Army, got back out. Kids were born, kind of priorities shifted in life, and then went kind of back into sales, but realized, I didn't want to be out on the ground pounding, doors and carrying the briefcase anymore. Having been away from my family for so long while I was in the Army, the last thing I wanted to do coming back to the corporate world was just travel again and be gone and away from the family. And that was kind of the epiphany I had, as well as what opened my eyes to getting out of the military. So kind of found a niche in the operations side of sales. So still working with the salespeople, still being able to use my kind of personality, my charisma, like the people pleasing and people person type skills that I love doing and love having. But also working kind of on the back end. So in our CRM tools or dashboards, analytics, reporting, those kind of things. So that's kind of the route I've gone since I got out of the military. And now I'm sales operations manager for a software company. We run all of the North American process for them. So everything from all the tools that they use on a daily basis to forecasting, reporting, and just all the kind of key metrics and KPIs for a business's health.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. I mean, I work in sales myself, and I'm actually traveling for the first time since my daughter was born next week. So I'm freaking out about being away for a few days. So we'll see.
Yeah. And honestly, like, in a different world, that was why I joined the military, right? Like I wanted to go, I wanted to deploy, I wanted to be gone, I wanted to kind of do my part. And then our son was born. And then I realized, wait a minute, I have to deploy in 2 months. He was born and then I left 2 months after. And then I didn't come home until he was almost walking. So that was tough for me, because when I joined the military, that wasn't on my mind. I wasn't thinking about, being there for kids and raising kids. And then when it happened, then I had no choice. I've got to deploy. It's what the orders say. It really opened my eyes to saying, oh man, I didn't realize, like, I'm going to miss my child's lives if I'm still in the military. No matter what I'm doing in the military or what is going on in the world, I'll still be gone a lot. And I don't want to miss my kids' lives and being there to help raise them and see those moments, because I missed everything from about 2 months to almost a year old with our son, which was kind of devastating to me.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your time in the Army has informed the way that you approach your role as a father and your role as in your career?
Yeah, it's tough because I have to balance that like military mindset in working with, civilians or the corporate world a lot. And it's very, very different worlds, right? Like in the military, it is just no BS, just 100%, like state the facts, give me the solutions and move towards like an execution. And in the corporate world, there's a lot more fluff. There's a lot more politics. There's a lot of that stuff that you have to skirt and kind of play around. And so I try and balance that. Same thing with raising kids. You can't be a drill sergeant all the time with your kids. And
Yeah.
some people are raised that way, and I was kind of raised that way, but not incredibly so. So it's always that balance of when you push, when you pull back, and whether it's in work or whether it's in raising kids.
Yeah. So you come back home and you get a quote unquote regular job, right? But then you have a new issue, which is work life balance and working all day and balancing that with family life. So how have you managed to juggle family life and career?
It was really tough at first because my wife and I both work, so we're dual income, dual working parents.
Yeah.
And when we first got back to North Carolina from the military, our son was in daycare. I had to drive 45 plus minutes every day to commute, and I had a job where I had to be, 8 to 5, like at the desk in the office, smiling and dialing, making those sales calls. And my wife she was a speech therapist at the time, so she was seeing patients and had to be in the office physically present. And so it was really tough balancing that. And like one of us was always rushing home as fast as we could to go get, the kid out of daycare, or if he was sick, someone was either like taking PTO or sick time off to take care of him at home. And being that kids get sick all the time in daycare, it
Oh
was
yeah.
incredibly stressful. We had a super high deductible insurance plan at this company too, and the fact that he was in the doctor's office every other month was just killing us financially because
Yeah.
we didn't have anything saved up in the HSA that we had with this company, but we were just paying out of pocket for everything. So it was a pretty tough time right after the military, and it didn't help that my wife took a pay cut coming back up to North Carolina from where we were in Texas. And then when I got out of the military, I had to take a pay cut as well to get back into the corporate world. So there was a lot of change, a lot of upheaval, and a lot of trying to get used to this new lifestyle. Because in the military, everything is pretty much taken care of for you. My wife was still working too, but I didn't have to worry about, the pay because they gave us money for basic allowance and housing, and everything was kind of figured out, and it was always consistent. And so now you're in the corporate world and daycare and commuting, and nothing is really consistent like it was when we were in the military. So it was a huge change for us.
Do you and your family not get insurance through like the Veterans Association or anything? Is that not a
You
thing?
you can choose to. There's certain like stipulations. I think if you're 100% disabled, or if you're a certain percentage disabled when you get out, you can get it for free. Otherwise, you can choose to pay for it on your own. And
Uh,
it's not like the best. It's pretty high cost and high deductible kind of plans as well. I think the guys who truly benefit the most from that are the ones that are more disabled, like service like related disabilities. So I have about 50% disability rating from my time in the army, and I don't think I qualify for getting their like healthcare for free.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you kind of you chose to make the sacrifice of leaving the army to for the betterment of your family. But I'm wondering, like, do you feel like there's still some sacrifices that you've had to make for your career, for your family, or for your family for your career?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, the reason I joined the military in the first place was to just go do my thing, go deploy, go feel like I was part of this like larger thing that was, important to me. It was important to my family. It had been important to my family for generations. And in my career aspirations in the army pretty much came to a screeching halt when our son was born, because I knew, and it wasn't something like I had any like resentment for, or felt like I was giving up a part of me. It was something that I just willfully chose to do because I realized what was important now. You join as a young kid and you don't have a family, you don't have kids, and you can go deploy and go overseas and fight and do that. When a kid is born, when my son was born, it changed everything for me. I didn't want to leave my wife in that situation at home. I didn't want to miss him being born and raised and things like that. And so that was the choice that I took to kind of cut my career in the army short and realize what was important to me and our family.
Yeah. So you have a pretty crazy story. You were shot, though
Yeah,
not during your time in the army,
correct. Yeah.
and more so that if you want to share like what happened, you can. But I'm really more interested in the recovery because you were on bed rest for a long time with the wife and kids and job that we're talking about. So I'd love to hear how that went. If you want to talk about how it happened, but more so just how did you balance it all after the fact?
Yeah, I mean, balancing it during the fact was tough too, because again, we both have jobs with the kids that were in school. And so I got shot in a kind of like a freak accident. There was a guy at a friend's house we were at who was trying to take apart his weapon. Um, we were just hanging out in the kitchen. It wasn't uncommon for someone to bring over a firearm and drop it off
No.
to the guy who lived there because he's a gunsmith.
You live in North
Um,
Carolina too, where
correct.
there's different gun laws in New York City where I live.
Yeah. We probably should clarify that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So he brings it over. He's taking it apart to get some work done to it, and I don't know if he really knew what he was doing in terms of taking it apart. So he didn't clear the chamber. He dropped the magazine, didn't clear the chamber. And in order to take a pistol fully apart, you have to pull the trigger in a lot of models to get the slide to come off. So he's doing this, obviously not carrying it or holding it in a safe direction, and pulls the trigger to take the slide off, and boom, it goes off. So it hits me, goes straight through my right arm, in and out, into my chest, breaks the rib, and goes through my diaphragm, my liver, and stops on top of my aortic artery by my stomach.
So it
Um,
almost like hit you like as though like you were like looking like away from him, like it went like into your arm and through your
Sideways,
body.
yeah, it came
Yeah.
in for me sideways. He was kind of standing to my right. So
Oh my god.
at the time, like, we didn't really know. I mean, obviously, there's some serious stuff going on, and my military training just immediately kicked in at this point. And so I realized what had happened. I'm still like ears ringing, kind of deaf from everything happening so close proximity. So I kind of like stumble out to our friend's garage and start immediately like shouting out orders. And luckily, the guy who lived there was also an Army veteran, so he had a trauma kit laying around, which I do as well, and he knew how to use it. So I immediately said, I need a tourniquet on my arm. I was like, I've got a shot in my chest. I know my rib's broken. I don't know if it's what we call a sucking chest wound in the military, which is where air is escaping from your chest cavity. So I said, I need to get an opaque dressing, like a chest wound, like a chest seal on my chest, because I'm not sure if it's a sucking wound yet, and I don't know how bad it's going to get. So he got the tourniquet on, we got the chest seal on. We're sitting there kind of stabilizing myself, waiting for the EMS to come. And we live kind of out in the country too, so it took about 15 minutes for EMS to get there, and then what felt like forever trying to get me loaded up and out of there as well. So it
Are
probably
you
wasn't.
like conscious at this point? Are you
Yeah,
able to stand, or are you like
I'm
totally out of it?
not able to stand. I'm kind of like laying down in the garage. They're helping me, kind of like propping me up. But I'm alert. Like, I was able to give them my social security number and name and everything when they arrived. And it was just like the problem too is being out in the country. They took me to the nearest like high level trauma center, which was about a 40-minute drive too.
Oh Jesus.
So luckily, I mean, honestly, again, we didn't know what the damage on the inside was like. I was still alert, still talking, so I had to assume like, oh, maybe okay, I'm not incredibly like hemorrhaging internally, at least, because I'm still here talking. But it was still like a race to get there as fast as we could, and it was an experience, man. So the worst part was, in terms of balancing it with the family, is our son. Either had the flu or just some really really bad type of cold or virus or something at the time. He was running like a 104 105 fever. He's 7 years old at this point. This was last summer. So the neighbors come over to the house while I'm getting tended to across, like, down the street, and tell my wife, like, hey, Dylan has been shot. There's an accident that happened, and
Jesus.
she's trying to process all this. We've got the baby upstairs sleeping. Our son is in the living room. He's like kind of really sick and ill, fevers and everything else. And so she's trying to figure out, like, in this moment, like, what to do, and
Yeah.
how do you prepare for that as a wife or a family. So we ended up having some of the neighborhood moms come stay at the house with the kids while she went over to try and find me in the hospital. But the recovery was tough too, because, like I said, we didn't really know how serious the injuries were on the inside at first. And then I went straight into surgery, don't really remember anything for like the first day or two. And then the doctor came in and really showed me how close, like millimeters, I was to just dying right there on the floor of that garage. So that was pretty tough to hear. My wife was in the room, and honestly, we made the decision to not tell our son for the first few weeks until we could kind of figure out how this was going to play out, make sure that I was going to be, okay in the long run. And we made the
So what are you
mistake.
saying him at that point? Where are you?
Yeah. So our wife just kind of told him, daddy was in an accident at the neighbor's house. He's in the hospital. He's still alive, but, we can't really tell you much more right now. And so he
Okay.
got a
So
little
he
worried.
knew. Okay.
Yeah, he knew something was going on, and kids are intuitive, man. Like they clue into stuff very quickly.
Yeah.
Um,
7 years old is not too young. Like he definitely understood what was
yeah,
happening.
yeah, and honestly, the crazy thing is, like hindsight, I've been teaching him like the proper, mechanics of handling firearms and using firearms and how important it is to be aware of safety measures and things like that. He bought himself a little BB gun last year, and we had been working with that. So that's an important lesson for me to want to teach him as well. And so we finally made the decision. I guess rewind a little bit. My wife made the mistake of FaceTiming with him while I was still in like pretty bad shape in the ICU, and she could tell it kind of shook him.
Sure.
And so he started getting a little bit more worried, a little bit more concerned about what's going on with dad. And then about a week later, I'm still in the hospital. We decide like, let's bring him up here. I'm looking a little bit better, feeling a little bit better, able to talk and sit up and things like that. And so I wanted to tell him what happened. And so I just him and I in the room together, I kind of walked through exactly what happened, told him everything. And I said, if you have any questions, like let me know. I don't want you to feel weird. I don't want you to feel scared. I don't want you to feel like anything unless you like tell me, or ask about it. Right. So surprisingly, like you said, as a 7-year-old, I was really impressed with how he took things, how he kind of like downloaded it and understood it. And then he started asking some really intuitive questions about it after the story and after I told him everything about it, what happened. So
Is
I
is
was
it
actually
unclear at this point if you're actually gonna live or not? Still.
now at this point, once they moved me out of ICU, I knew I was like going to live. We had some complications along the way with like fluid buildup in my liver. I mean, I had tubes coming out
Sure.
of my liver, tubes coming out of my chest, and holes in my body. But then what happened was is my gut didn't wake back up. So they took I had a NG tube going down my throat,
Mhm.
and they took it out. They were like, "Oh, you can go ahead and start eating and drinking." And I had zero appetite. This has been almost a week at this point. I hadn't had a single morsel of food.
Mm.
Um, and so I finally tried to eat something small, and it doesn't sit well. I'm immediately like getting sick and vomiting and things like that. And so they realized my entire gut hadn't woken back up essentially from the trauma and the surgery, because they
Mm.
cut me open from my almost my chest bone to my below my belly button.
Yeah.
So I had to stay in. They go back into an NG tube, and I had to start getting like food and nutrients through my arm because I couldn't eat or drink anything. So I sat like that for about 3 weeks while they were trying to see if like my gut and my organs and everything in the inside would start waking up from the shock and the trauma. And eventually they started to get kind of more signs of waking up, which was great because that NG tube was torture to have in there for so long.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, and then once, I was in total for just over, oh man, like almost 2 months, I think. I can't remember like the exact dates. It was all kind of a blur. But
You're in the hospital for almost 2 months.
yeah, yeah. And I got home towards the end of the summer and was on, disability from work now at this point, and trying to figure out, and again, work life balance. My wife was still working. She was at a company that was very strict about coming back into the office, and they had gone to this hybrid schedule, and they were like, take no prisoners. Like, you can't work remotely on the days you're supposed to be in the office. And so
Even when your husband's in the hospital
yeah.
shot.
Yeah, like trying not to die in the hospital, you
Yeah.
still have to come into the office. And it
Jesus.
was it was a really, really bad taste in her mouth and our mouth about like the entire experience. So I get home and she's not allowed to work remote. And so I'm at the house by myself. I can't even stand up on my own. I can't even put socks on my own, or barely get to the bathroom on my own. And she has to go into the office 3 days a week. Um, so it was kind of tough. My brother came into town for a little bit. My mom was here locally, kind of coming in and out, helping and things like that. And then my wife is doing everything. She's getting the kids out the door, ready for school, like helping out with the nanny, getting the baby over there and things like that. And it was just a crazy balance from like the family perspective, because you go down a partner, and honestly, like it added like another
Right. Yeah. It's not
child.
like you're just gone. You're also need to be help for.
I'm now like another burden to my wife to have to take care of, because I had still wounds in my stomach and arms that we were packing with gauze on a daily basis, like at the house. And
Ugh.
so my wife turned into a nurse essentially, and had to take care of all of this, had to take care of the kids, and still had to go to work. So it was really stressful time, and really challenging. And I'm like, looking back, it's incredible how great she did as the spouse that had to step up and do everything. And I'm incredibly grateful for it.
Yeah, man. I mean, first of all, incredible story and incredible response. I mean, I'm a city boy, and if I got shot, I mean, I would not be saying any barking any orders. I wouldn't know what to do. I'm certainly just calling 911 and hoping I make it. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty incredible on its own, and obviously. I appreciate you sharing. That's an incredible journey that you went on. And so, how long until so you're in the hospital for 2 months, and then you're home? How long until you're able to really like go back to work?
It was pretty incredible, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not like tooting my own horn, but I'm pretty sure the PTs and the doctors really had no idea how fast I was going to recover. Because not only do you have like major trauma from the surgery, you've got major trauma from the injury. I've got
Yeah.
a broken rib, which can take months to heal just by themselves,
Oh
much
yeah.
less with all the other stuff. So I don't think they had any expectations of me recovering quickly. They said it was going to take up to maybe a year. And so I immediately started going to physical therapy and working on things. My back muscles were completely shot. No pun intended, I guess. That's a terrible
They
joke.
were.
Because I had been sitting in the hospital for months with an epidural in my back. And it just wrecked havoc on my muscles and my core strength and everything else. So
I mean, what's it like walking the first time? Because you don't walk for a while, right?
yeah, no, I was doing more of like a shuffle. I mean, I had the little cart with all the medicines hooked up to me from all the different tubes in me. So carrying that around and trying to like shuffle around the hospital, they wanted me to do laps as much as possible. So I would try to do it a few times a day, and if I wasn't feeling like it, I didn't do it. But like sitting in the bed like was just torture for me because I'm an active person, and so just sitting there like trying to pass time, watch movies on Netflix was just torture. But
Yeah.
the recovery afterwards, I mean, so I've been a hockey player. I'm a pretty avid like exerciser, working out, lifting, playing with the kids, that kind of thing. And so my goal was like, I'm getting back to it. Like I want to get back to lifting. I want to get back to playing hockey and coaching and been skating with the kids. Um, so went back, started going to PT a couple times a week, and they gave me, a bunch of different exercises to start doing at home to build up the strength and kind of get those muscles working again. And it took a few months before I really kind of started seeing progress. I think within maybe 2 months of being at home, I went from not being able to like barely stand on my own to fully being able to like drive myself to physical therapy at this point, which was incredible. Um,
You're still not working at that point?
yeah, still not working. I was out for probably another 2 months when I got home from work, and then it was a struggle. I mean, even though I'm remote, I can sit at a desk. I'm just kind of sitting there during the day. The chair that I was in didn't have the right kind of like lumbar support for me to support
Yeah.
myself with my core. So it was still kind of a struggle when I went back to work. But the company I was at the time, it was a different company than where I'm at now. They were pretty understanding and kind of made things a lot easier for me, which was nice. Again, kind of helped with alleviating some of that stress and figuring out like what the heck we're going to do. But I guess the biggest takeaway from it all, and I guess long story short, is ended up recovering. I ended up being back out on the ice playing hockey before the end of the fall last year. And once I went to like my last checkup with the doctors, they were like, you can do what you want to whatever limit you want. Obviously, you're going to be a risk for like hernias for the rest of your life because of how they had to kind of slice me open.
Mhm.
But they were pretty shocked that I wanted to get right back out there and start playing hockey and lifting weights again as quickly as I did.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, really crazy and miraculous recovery.
Yeah.
I think you and I are similar in that like career or job is like more of like a means to an end than like something like it's like is it like work to live instead of live to work, right?
Yeah.
And after you get shot and have this incredible recovery, I have to imagine you have a little bit of a new lease on life, and it's probably hard to just like go back to some day job, right?
It was a struggle. And honestly, I think it's why I ended up leaving that job right before Christmas of just, a few months ago because of that kind of epiphany again, where we were just like, man, like, what are we doing in our life right now? Just slaving away. Like we don't really love what we're doing. We realize how important family and our lives are and being with our family and kind of building these memories. So we ended up planning probably 3 or 4 trips in the fall last year with the kids and then some without the kids, where just my wife and I went with my brother and his wife out to Denver, and we took a trip to Wyoming, and we went to the Outer Banks and did a bunch of stuff last year that we were like, you know what, like I think we need to start prioritizing making memories with the family and with the kids and just kind of enjoying life. So we had a couple different things and ideas we were floating around. We were like, let's just travel. Let's put the kids in homeschool and buy an RV and just travel the world because or travel the country, right? Because
Yeah.
you're never going to get those kind of memories back. And it's a lot of what we're kind of some of the stuff we're looking into now on the side. We're looking at buying into a franchise and opening our own gym that focuses on coaching like youth athletics and things like that. Another kind of passionate hobby that we have with coaching and with fitness and everything else. So that came from this as well. I think we realized, like you said, we were working to live, not living to work. And we had to have something that we were passionate about to keep kind of driving us forward. And so I think the side hustle of this franchise is going to kind of scratch those itches for us.
Yeah, that's super exciting. So is the plan to do it on the side and then one day, I guess, potentially replace your job, but you're gonna do both for now?
Yeah, we're going to do both for now. I think that the way that the business model is set up is we don't have to quit our day jobs, which is nice. You've got that kind of, cushion and that safety net. But then I think eventually for me, I want it to kind of eventually be the exit strategy from the corporate world for me is to work for myself. And honestly, I think it's something I learned from the military as well, is that I want to be in business for myself and be my own boss. And I think that was always something I did because I've run my own DJ company for years now as well. So I've had that kind of entrepreneurial mindset for a while. But I just think long term, I think we'll be happier. We'll be able to pour more passion into the work that we do if it's something that we physically own ourselves.
Mm. I'm curious how the army instilled that in you. I would have just assumed that like the army would more give you the idea of like falling in line and working for somebody else.
Yeah, I think that it had like the opposite effect when you've been in a Monday morning motor pool formation in 100-degree heat in Texas,
Yeah,
and you don't want to be there, but you have to be there because you're told to be there. It's like, oh my gosh, like it's just like the big kind of government answer to everything. Like there's, this massive bureaucratic process to everything. And it really just taught me like, man, I just want to go in business for myself. I want to be my own boss, make my own decisions, be as agile and fast and quick turning as I need to be instead of this massive ship and these massive wheels that just take so long to turn and move and pivot. So I think
okay. So the army wasn't like encouraging entrepreneurship. It was more like
no,
your
no,
reaction to
it did encourage entrepreneurship, but the opposite way.
right. Yeah, it didn't mean to. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
And
that
honestly,
makes
you
sense.
see that a lot. There's a lot of veterans that come out nowadays and these different brands that are, Grunt Style or Black Rifle Coffee, all of these different companies that are out there nowadays that are starting to become really popular in the world are all because veterans probably had the same experience where they're like, man, this like method of solving problems or running an organization was torture for everyone. I want to be in business for myself. And then they go out there and start creating these companies. And now you see a ton of successful veterans out there in the workplace
Yeah.
making a name for themselves, building their own companies and kind of starting their own thing, which I love.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the process like in looking into a franchise? Did you just like that type of gym and then start looking into it, or were you like vetting a lot of different franchises first? Like, how did you go about it?
Yeah, so I've got a really good friend who's in like franchise PR and marketing, and he's always kind of been in my ear, and that little like person on your shoulder talking about franchising, and I've heard it over the years. And he finally put me in touch with someone because I was telling him like, look, we want to do something different. We want to get into like a side hustle that is kind of setting us up for the future, but also something that we can run and own. So he put me in touch with what they call a franchise coach. And then he started kind of figuring out our interests, our likes, and what we were really passionate about. And then he was the one that was sending us different organizations and companies and franchises that he thought might be a good fit. And so I think we've stumbled across this one on our own, separate from him, but he was able to still kind of walk us through the process because it's kind of a big deal, right? You're buying into a business and they've got to vet you and you've got to vet them. And there's tons of questions in terms of how am I going to afford this? How am I going to get this off the ground? Like how much am I going to need like capital wise to get it started? And what's the earning potential once we get it off the ground and how much time is going to be involved? Because like I said, we wanted to take a leap of faith, but we also didn't want to completely quit our day jobs. So like trying to mitigate some of that risk in terms of starting your own company as much as we could. And so I think we landed on a really good model and a really good company. I'm really excited about. I don't want to say the name just yet because it's not
Sure,
official.
sure, sure.
But we are, it'll be a brick and mortar gym that focuses in training like youth and athletes and getting them to that next level, which we would be really excited for.
Love it. All right, we're going to move into the final segment called Dylan's Advice Corner. So I'm going to ask you for some advice on a few topics. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. All right. Well, um, first of all, what is your biggest piece of advice for work-life balance?
I think it's kind of like what you and I have talked about before, self-care. You got to take care of yourself first. Same thing with like you're on a plane, masks come down, put your mask on first, then help others. I think if even as a parent or even as just like someone in the corporate world trying to, make their way and you've just got a spouse or something, like take care of your mental and your physical health first. You've got to prioritize it because it will make you a better father, it'll make you a better husband or wife, it'll make you a better employee or employer depending on your situation. And it teaches you things kind of that you don't expect it to. Working out every day, exercising, pushing your limits teaches you to kind of overcome obstacles. It teaches you how to deal with adversity, and it shows that you can be consistent. You can push yourself to the limit. You know how to struggle and overcome things, and it does a lot more for people than they realize.
Yeah. What advice do you have for somebody that's either dealing with a major health issue or has a partner that's dealing with a major health issue?
I think just focusing on the end goal. Obviously, there's certain situations that might dictate what you can and can't do, and I pushed the limit again with my recovery because I knew it felt okay. The doctors kind of gave me the okay to do it. I wanted to be off of any meds, anything that they gave me. I wanted to do naturally and just kind of building my strength back up organically, the correct way, without needing to have pain meds and things like that. So I would just say, keep your eyes focused, keep hustling, keep working hard, and truly the only way you can recover from something like that is pushing yourself to the limit and just having kind of like a never quit mentality.
Yeah. What advice do you have for somebody who's about to become a parent but has a career they still want to focus on?
That's a tough one too. I think, obviously there's tons of successful working parents in the world today. And people make it happen, and everyone's situation is different. Obviously, you've got daycare expenses, you've got different financial obligations, and like we talked about with travel and being away and things like that. So having a good kind of like family kind of network or support kind of network to help out with things like that is huge. My mother lives like 10-15 minutes away from here, so she helps with carpool and pick up and drop off, things like that. If we leave for work travel or something like that, she's always there to kind of support. She'll usually take one of the kids for us. And when we were in Texas, we didn't have that kind of support network. So just establishing those things and really kind of just keeping that open line of communication with your spouse in terms of what your goals are for your career. If you're very career focused, but you want to have kids, then let that be known, because you don't want to start building that resentment if one partner thinks they're getting shafted on their career goals while the other one is succeeding because of someone taking on more of the responsibility with kid raising and that kind of thing. So it's a balance, and it's just, I think, communication. I think kind of being aware of what's important in life too, because at the end of the day, and this is just maybe my opinion on the corporate world too, though, like if I died, my company was going to hire my replacement tomorrow,
Sure.
right? So to me, like building that relationship and those family memories and those family traditions to me is far more important than my career aspirations to just personally. So that would be my advice, is figure out what's important to you and what's best for your family.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
Oh man. That's a tough one. I've had, like, in terms of work or family or
And
both or
anything, yeah,
anything,
whatever comes to mind.
I think, just kind of relying on your natural God-given abilities to do what you're good at. Find a way to make what you're good at a career, and you'll never quote unquote work a day in your life. And I think that's something that we're pursuing now with this gym. And I think it'll be something that we truly don't feel like we're working any longer. We're just pursuing our passions, and so that's what I'm really excited about.
What advice would you give to your former self?
Ha! I would have bought land and houses years ago
Yeah.
because nowadays it's insane. I think the young me was not financially smart, spent dumb money and did dumb things, but that's part of being young. It's a lesson you have to learn the hard way, and I think being financially secure is obviously important, but also having memories and living your life are as important as that as well. I would have bought land and houses years ago, though.
Same, man. Same. All right, last question. By the time this episode comes out, I think my daughter will be about 9 months old. So, what advice do you have for me as the father of a 9 month old?
9-month olds are fun. That's when that personality is coming out. They might be wanting to walk or stand, and it gets to me, that was always like the turning point of, all right, we're starting to figure this out. Like, we've got a good routine, we've got a good nap schedule, we know what he or she kind of does with like eating and sleeping, and your life starts becoming a bit more normal. You're able to go out and do more fun things. You start seeing your friends more often, taking the baby with you, and you're just right around the corner from that 1 year old birthday party. So it's just everything changes on a weekly basis from then on. And it's like you almost get out of that baby phase a lot faster than you realize. And then it's full fledged toddler mode. And then once they start walking, you're never going to stop. It'll just be
Oh,
chasing them
yeah.
everywhere, which is great. I love it because I'm more of a toddler enthusiast than I was a baby
Okay.
enthusiast.
Interesting. Interesting.
I love the toddler phase. It's
Yeah.
fun.
All right. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, Dylan, this has been a great conversation. Where can people go to connect with you or learn more about you or anything that you'd like to share or promote?
Yeah, absolutely. So I run the Dad Bod Brigade podcast. We talk about raising strong, masculine, resilient, healthy kids, and we also kind of teach parents and dads how to do the same at the same time. So it's a play on words, the Dad Bod Brigade. But you can find us at www.dadbodbrigade.com and then on Instagram at Dad Bod Brigade.
Awesome. Well, I'll link to all that in the show notes. Dylan Hudock, everybody. Dylan, thank you so much.
Thanks, Anthony. It was great chatting, man.